Okay, we're going to start on part two of exploring the fourfold mandate expressed in Genesis: be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. The last time we really covered the idea of worldwide civilization. We talked about John Lennon and his imagine, the world a better place. And it's something that we all want. It's something we all, I think, fundamentally know is possible. And I think we know that because we're made to do that. I'm going to share a quick reflection from Yuval Harari again. And this is about understanding this creative capacity of human beings. Understanding human history in the millennia following the agricultural revolution boils down to a single question: how did humans organize themselves in mass cooperation networks when they lacked the biological instincts necessary to sustain such networks? The short answer is that humans created imagined orders and devised scripts. These two inventions filled the gaps left by our biological inheritance. It's an interesting perspective. I think the capacity to organize based on consciousness may have a genetic component which is best explained by the nature of our consciousness being similar to that of an intelligent designer or a creator capable of bringing things out of nothing. It's certainly not on the same level, but it operates in much the same way. We're just not very good at it. Okay, at this juncture, I believe we ought to have a working definition of culture. It's a key concept in understanding civilization and humanity. Cultural anthropologists Daniel Bates and Fred Plog describe it this way: civilization, or culture, taken in its broad ethnographic sense, is that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. Now, that's just one definition. There's a lot of them, but that's a really short one, and I think it covers most of the really key and important things. If you think about it, this definition can be applied at nearly any scale. It's going to be applied to a family, a workplace, a neighborhood in a larger city, the city itself, a state, a nation, and so on. It's important to come to terms with how these various spheres of culture affect the human experience. That's why I like Harari's view, because it helps to focus on that, on the fact that we create these things, and because we create them, they have the tendency to have flaws or to be in need of improvement. But the cultural messages, for example, that are internalized from family, job, church, politics, media, ethnicity, and so on, are more likely than not to be incongruous with one another, and this creates a lot of problems. Because we have a 24-hour news cycle, the internet, and a cornucopia of information and choices available to us, we're bombarded with a never-abating stream of experience. These conflicts, or the conflicts engendered by these different ideas, these different cultural influences, can go unrecognized due to information overload. Yet their effect can be very real and often long-lasting and lead to destructive identity and interpersonal difficulties. Alexander the Great spread Greek culture through the Mediterranean and Middle East as far as modern-day Pakistan. His empire was divided among his successors and eventually became the Roman Empire. Similarly, during roughly the same period, in Eastern Eurasia, 7 imperial states vied for dominance. From this struggle, the Chinese Han Empire was established, lasting some 400 years, from 206 BCE to 220 CE. I think it's helpful to note that the characteristics of each of these epochs overlap in the progress of history. During the time some regions turned to agriculture, gaining mastery in multiplication and beginning to contend with filling, others were still very much in the fruitful stage of the hunter-gatherers and nomads. We see that overlap even today. There are still some people groups who operate much as our hunter-gatherer forebears. The empire buildings seen across the globe at various times are harbingers of the final stage of subduing. The point being that each of the four clauses of the mandate correspond to the development of this core of inherent capacities we possess as a species. We become capable of surviving as an individual, followed by the capacity to contribute to others at different levels of society. We multiply those capacities. And we expand into ever-widening spheres of interaction and influence. And finally, we become settled and established. It's subdued. Or we gain control of it. And a simple example would be an entrepreneur. He or she gets a great idea, takes the time to perfect the product, and then launches it. Customers begin using the product, word of mouth and advertising make it available to more and more people. As demand for the product multiplies, it begins to fill the demand from customers for the product in a marketplace. Seeing an opportunity, others may jump into the market. Eventually, a shakeout will occur and the market will be subdued by the strongest players. As you may have guessed, I believe we are in the throes of a global level struggle to subdue the whole Earth as a species. That doesn't merely mean conquest and acquisition of regions and resources. It doesn't only mean employing slavery in the forms it still exists, or protecting ourselves from the dangers posed by nature, or learning to use the Earth's resources in ways that don't cause more unintended negative consequences than benefits. Those things are all real. But it means actually being proficient at maintaining civilization at a global level, in a balance, in harmony. Perhaps, back to John Lennon, the world would live as one. The inference of unity around that and the balance that comes with that certainly is worth examining and working toward. There's no doubt that at every stage in our history as well as now, we get a mixed report card. We've done some wonderful things and some hideous things. I inferred this earlier when I posed that it might take 10,000 years for our species to become adept at collaborating on a global technologically advanced civilization. I have no prediction as to what this might ultimately look like. I do, however, suspect that one phase of this final stage is mentioned in the Bible. It's the millennial reign of Jesus. That makes sense if God's purpose is to create civilization builders. And I suspect that it is. In order for this to happen, we have to attain mastery of ourselves, our motives, our behavior in society, and our relationship to the animals and the environment we occupy. If all this is not an accident, and the Bible is in reality the expression of a universal creator as it claims, and if that creator's intent is, among other things, for us to steward this little blue ball tucked away in the vast expanse of trillions of stars, then perhaps, just perhaps, we have sufficient communication and guidance from him to set about it. I'll put it this way. I believe God made us to do precisely what we have. Yet the work here is by no means finished. I also believe that the Sermon on the Mount is Jesus' executive summary of how humans can attain the character on an individual level to be citizen participants in a universal spiritual realm which Jesus declared was at hand and of which he is founder and regent. I like the way Mike Bickle puts it. The Sermon on the Mount is Jesus' most comprehensive statement on the believer's role in cooperating with the Holy Spirit. I think this perspective is paramount. Certainly, if we, as well as our leaders and institutions, are corrupt, we will not ultimately flourish. You can't build a house that will stand on a bad foundation with rotted timbers. It comes down to what each individual man and woman does regarding their own humanity, how they choose to align with the moral physics in the spiritual realm which is among us even now, how they answer the three questions which the Bible seems to be built around. We'll look at those questions in the next segment. Thank you for listening.